I am sad this morning because it's the last day of Technicolor. I don't know, I'm sad. I'm gonna miss Joseph. He's become a friend over the last 2 months. I hope it's been a helpful series, a reintroduction maybe to a guy who haven't been acquainted with before or in a long time. I think his life continues to be this example of what it means when we're called to follow Christ and live this thing we call faith out loud. As I was getting ready for this week, I started thinking about a weird truth about humanity, a way that we think, specifically a way that we remember things. Have you ever noticed how we tend to remember things better than what they actually were? We kind of remember the best parts of things, and when we tell the story about those things, it's always the best parts. Let me give you an example. You remember your first car? In your mind, your first car probably looked a little something like this. Cool, right? I mean, the heat didn't work, but it was a cool car. And when you tell your kids or your neighbors or your grandkids or your nieces or nephews or whatever about your first car, you talk about the best parts of it. There might have only been one part, but you only talk about the best parts because there's nostalgia when it comes to our car, our first one. It meant something to us. It was important to us, and we hold on to those kinds of things. But the truth is your first car probably looked more like this car. And for whatever reason, we don't talk about that. We don't explain that one. Or how about your handwriting? You probably have an idea. Remember when we used to write things by hand? That seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? But we used to write things by hand, and you probably remember your handwriting being exquisite and a modern work of art, and anyone who beheld your handwriting was lucky and blessed. But your memory of your handwriting is probably different than your teacher's memory of your handwriting. What they remember is more like this. Chicken scratch. Maybe that's why we all passed, right? They just couldn't tell if we had the right or wrong answer, so we're just okay. There's a group of people who live this out more than any other group of people, though. I mean, it's their heartbeat. This idea like positive thinking, that Cubs fans bleed it, right? I mean, we do. Guilty. It's always, this is the year, right? It's 2016. This is the year we're going to do it, and the curse will be broken, and all of this kind of stuff. And we quickly forget last year when we were saying maybe next year, right? That's the actual memory for so long is maybe next year, but quickly we forget that. And we hold on to the warm fuzzies that come with sitting at Wrigley Field and having a hot dog, right? That's what we hold on to, and it gives us hope going into the future. We kind of put rose-colored glasses on our memories so that it helps us accept our memories, because not every one that we have in our brain is good. So we pick out the highlights so that we have the ability to kind of pick up and keep moving through life. And the world would argue that that is exactly what the Christian faith is all about. That our faith is this idea that we can look at things positively when they're negative. It's the power of positive thinking. That's what some would label Christianity, is that we infuse or we project onto life's difficult circumstances some good. And that helps us carry on through that good. But we're just kidding ourselves. Right? We're just fooling ourselves. It's a survival mechanism is what a lot of people would say, that we kind of have to invent this idea so that the hard or mundane parts of our life feel like they have some kind of meaning. That faith is just these ideas that get projected onto things. It's no secret that my family and I are big Disney fans, and we love going to Disney. And the last time we were there, we got introduced to this brand new thing that they're doing. You remember the castle, the big castle when you first walk in, Cinderella's castle. Some of you are checking out of this sermon right now because you hate that place. I get it. Hang in. This won't last long. Remember, okay, so the castle is this white building with these blue kind of tops on the turrets around all over the place. But they've found these projectors from the future now that they shoot at the castle, and when it's nighttime, they can transform the castle into virtually anything they want. Just take a look. The lights go down at night, and they project on, and it looks entirely different. And every once in a while, Tinkerbell will shoot across the castle, leaving pixie dust as she goes. Or any Disney creature character can go dancing across, or snow can fall, or fireworks can go off right on the castle, and it becomes this entirely different thing, all because they're able to project something that's not actually there onto it, and it makes you believe that it is. And some would say that's what faith, that's what religion is that it takes life, this white castle with blue turrets on top, and we project some meaning onto it so that we feel warm and fuzzy about life. But what if I told you this morning that faith is actually the complete opposite of that? That faith isn't so much about putting something on as it is removing something to see what's actually there. It's not seeing what we want to see, it's seeing what is actually there to be seen. I want to play this out a little bit as we conclude our time with Joseph, and we're going to look at him in a place that most people don't think of when they hear his name, in the New Testament. So if you've got a Bible with you, or you're going to pull it up on your phone, we're going to be in Hebrews this morning, Hebrews chapter 11. Now, theologians often refer to Hebrews chapter 11 as the Hall of Faith, or the Hall of Fame for big faith kind of people. And that's the prerequisite. If you have big faith, you get into the Hall of Faith in chapter 11 of Hebrews. And it starts with Abel, and it goes all the way on to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. And all of these guys and gals are listed as people who had big faith. They're the pillars of our faith. They're the people that we look up to and we want to emulate and be like. That's what chapter 11 is all about. In almost every sentence before they mention the person, they say it was by faith. And what I love is that the writer didn't leave it up to us to figure out what faith is. They define it for us right at the beginning of chapter 11. So if you want to look at chapter 11 of Hebrews, starting in verse 1. Hebrews 11, verse 1 reads like this. Now faith is... So here comes the definition. Faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. It's like the writer goes, faith equals, and then gives this kind of two-part definition to what faith is. And it starts with faith is confidence in what we hope for. Confidence in what we hope for. Now, I wrestle with this question, well, what is it that we hope for? If we're going to have confidence in something, then we better understand what it is that we're putting our confidence in. Now, by the time we get to Hebrews 11, a whole lot has happened since Joseph. The Exodus, the kings, on into Jesus coming and dying on the cross, raising from the dead, coming out of the tomb, ascending to heaven, Paul and the church is being planted, and Peter and all of these guys are out spreading the news that Jesus is the Son of God and the forgiver of sins. And so we get to Hebrews 11, and hope is defined as according to what has happened before then. And what's happened before then is this unbelievable, unmistakable pursuit of humanity by God. That from the very first page, Genesis 1:1, God created, all the way until you get to the end, the last sentence, where Jesus is on the throne, is about God going after humanity. And this idea of redemption and restoration. And God stopping at nothing, quite literally nothing, for you and me. And our hope is in that Jesus was who he said he was. And that narrative is actually taking place throughout history. That God is in control, that there is more to this story. That's been Joseph. He's been this microcosm of the larger epic that God is coming after humanity and loving mankind. That's Joseph is the kind of nutshell version of that. And so when Hebrews says faith is confidence in what we hope for, confidence in a future that God will one day stop all this madness and be king. That's hope. And we have confidence in it. The second part of the definition is assurance. Assurance in what is unseen. Now, that's important to understand right there. This idea that there is something we don't see. We live in a post-literate society, don't we? Here's what I mean by that. We are obsessed with watching, not reading. Most people, there are a few readers in the world that just consume books. But most of us would rather watch a 1.5-minute YouTube version of someone explaining the book than actually reading the book, right? We watch or we look at. Everything needs to be in picture form these days. And that's not a generational thing, that's a societal thing. It's just who we've kind of become. So it's very difficult for us to have assurance in something that we can't put our eyeballs on. It's difficult for us to have confidence in something that we can't see. But faith is understanding that there is more. That there's more beneath the surface. That there's more outside of our little bubble. Things that we can't see. And I love that the definition is assurance about what we do not see, as if it is a given. It's not assurance that there might be more than we see. No, we know there's more than we can see. That God is more at work than we sometimes feel, than we sometimes recognize. So faith is not this projection on, it's not putting meaning on something. It's understanding there's meaning there. We just need to have the eyes to see it. So faith is not rose-colored glasses. It's seeing reality. Faith is not rose-colored glasses. It's seeing reality. It's not putting truth or positive spin on some fact. It's understanding what's in that fact already. So Hebrews gives us this definition right at the beginning of chapter 11, verse 1. And then if you jump down to chapter 11, verse 22, we get to our guy. By faith, Joseph. I'm going to stop right there. So, by confidence in what he hoped for and assurance in what he couldn't see, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. You remember, just last week, Joseph is ready to die, and instead of talking about himself, he talks about this promise that God gave his grandfather, great-grandfather, and said, I'm going to give you a promised land. You're going to grow to be a great nation. And Joseph has confidence in that hope and assurance in what he can't see, this idea that all along God has been working in his life, putting circumstances together to create this masterpiece. He has assurance in that. So, when we get there, not if, but when, I want you to take my bones with you and bury them there. That's faith. That's confidence in what he hoped for and assurance in what he couldn't see. Now you might argue, well, Joseph is just projecting hope. That's what hope is, right? Is hoping something comes true. I would argue Joseph was doing more than that. He was understanding something underneath the surface. So it is the difference between projection and lighting. Those are two very different things. Projection and lighting. Projection takes a false reality, puts it up onto a surface so you believe something different about that surface. Right? The screens you're looking at in front of you, those words are not actually on the screen. Those pictures are not actually on the screen, but the projectors hanging in those little crates make you think it is. It's projecting the image up onto them. What lighting does is reveal something that's already there. Lighting cannot make something real. It only shows you what's real. And that's what Joseph was, is this light that was showing God's plan being worked out. Remember when he said to his brothers, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. That's not him projecting, that's him revealing. That's him showing his brothers, you might not have been able to see it, but I have confidence in the hope that God gave us. I have assurance that God's at work even though I can't see him. So what you intended for evil, look at what God has done. You sold me off, I end up here in Egypt, and you're eating thanks to your mistake. Because God is there. I've learned we'd shoot these videos every once in a while, or I've been in pictures, and I've learned lighting can't make you magically more handsome or thin. As much as I've asked them to. The fact that this video is going to be online this week is horrifying to me, because someone's going to be looking at me, and myself included, and I can only bear 2 minutes. But lighting only shows what's there. Projection could make it look different, but lighting can only show what's already there. And so faith is not rose-colored glasses in that it makes something look better. It's just seeing reality. It's just seeing what's already there. We started way back January 10th. Remember January? That seemed like a long time ago. And we talked about this concept that there's more God in every single situation in your life than you think. And the truth in that idea is not that we put more God into every situation. It's that he's already there. We just don't see it. But Joseph lived a very different life. And so we get all the way through the Hall of Faith. And it would be well worth a read later today. But you get all the way through the Hall of Faith. And then the author transitions into chapter 12 with a monumental word. A huge word that has serious ramifications for you and for me. It's this word, therefore. Now, why is that important? Because it takes chapter 11 and hinges chapter 12 on it. In other words, given all that you've just read about, given that incredible story of faith from those incredible people, here's what it means for you. Chapter 12, verse 1, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That, therefore, means a lot. It says, therefore, given what you've learned about Joseph in our case, here's how you are supposed to live. And it starts with this idea of throwing off whatever hinders you or entangles you. Throw off sin, whatever is preventing you from living the life like Joseph lived the life. You need to get rid of that. That's the so what. So Joseph, he lived by faith. So you need to get whatever's going to keep you from living by faith out of your life. Now that might be a something. It might be a someone. But whatever's keeping you from chasing after God in the way that Joseph chased after God, you need to get rid of it. And here's why. It mentions the word sin. Now, if you've grown up in the church, you're familiar with this word. We throw it around a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of Christians don't know what it means, other than bad person. But the most fundamental, simplistic, basic way to define the word sin is rebellion against God. When we don't live the way God wants us to live, when we go against his created order, when we try and put the crown on and do things our way, that's sin. That's rebelling against God. And what Hebrews says is you need to get rid of that. Here's why. Sin blurs your vision. Sin makes it difficult for you to see reality. Here's the way we think so often, because we'll say things like we're natural-born sinners, that's how we're created. And so we think, well, it's natural, or it's the most basic of reality for us to see things the way we see it. So when we become a Christian and we throw faith on top of it, then we see clearly. But the truth, and if I can say it, the most genius strategy by Satan is that there's a little bit of truth in it all of the time. It's just skewed. It's just blurred. It's just pulled out of focus enough so that you can't see what's actually there anymore. You see, we think faith fixes the problem in that it's like glasses, right? If your vision's blurry, you go to the eye doctor and you say, I can't see straight, so I need glasses or I need contacts. And we think that's what faith is that it's like Jesus glasses for our messed up world. But the truth is, what faith does is it's more like LASIK surgery, so that you can see again what's actually there. So that this is why the Bible says the scales fall off. Because sin skews our ability to see reality. It's counterintuitive, because anytime you go to church, it feels like they're asking you to see something differently that you don't see naturally, but you aren't seeing reality. It's faith that gives us the ability to see it for real. And here's what's most fascinating about Jesus, and the hardest thing to get my head around with him, is that he never had blurred vision. He never sinned. If for the next 31 days you woke up every morning and tried to spend 15 minutes thinking about the fact that Jesus never, ever, ever acted outside of the will of God, you will have a headache every day when you go to work. But Jesus lives this life free of that blurred vision, constantly in step with God, constantly doing the will of the Father. That's what he said over and over again. I came to do the will of the Father. And so when in Hebrews it says that for the joy set before him, which seems really bizarre when we're talking about the cross and death and the brutality of all of that, that Jesus would look at that with joy. You know why? Because his vision on that, his concept of that, his understanding of that was not skewed. He understood it in the context of this larger narrative. He understood that as a result of that cross, as a result of death, as a result of resurrection, that humanity would have the opportunity to be restored to right with God. And so it was with joy, or for that joy, that he endured what he endured. You see, his understanding of reality was crystal clear. And some would say, well, Christians are just, again, projecting meaning into that death because it was so horrific and seemed so innocent. He seemed so innocent that we have to attach meaning to it in order for us to feel okay about ourselves every Easter. But according to Scripture, the message from the start was reconciliation. So Jesus drew the target for everybody and then shot and hit it. It wasn't the other way around, where Jesus did what he did, and then Christians since then have drawn a target around it and said, look what Jesus did. That would be projection. That would be rose-colored glasses. But faith is not rose-colored glasses. It's seeing reality. It's seeing reality, what's actually really there. So the therefore is important, because it calls you and I to live with confidence in what we hope for and assurance in what we can't see. And I know that's why Jesus said what he said in the Sermon on the Mount. We've referenced it several times over the last couple months, and we're going to end there because I think it crystallizes what we're getting at in Hebrews. Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 14, Jesus makes a very interesting comment that you'll recognize. He says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Jesus did not say, "You are the projector for the world." He doesn't say, "You are the people who are going to get people to believe that there's meaning in life." No, you are the light. You are the ones that are going to show them what's actually there. You're going to show them the color that's inside the gray. You're going to show them that God is present, which is so interesting in his analogy. He uses this idea of light. And most at the time would understand that a lamp or a candle, remember, we're dealing with pre-electricity days, that this symbolized divine presence. And so oftentimes you'll see candles get lit because it reminds whoever that God is with them. And so when Jesus says, "You are the light of the world," part of what he's saying is, you are the ones who are going to show the world that I am present. You're the light bearers. You're not the source of the light, right? This had to be lit by an outside source. But you are the bearers of the light. And you're to live this out. This is the therefore. This is the shed whatever. Get rid of the hindrances and entanglements so that you can live a life of faith like Joseph lived. And so Jesus says, no one lights that lamp and puts a bowl over the top of it. That would be dumb. That would be against the point altogether. But where Hebrews and Jesus are coming together is that this bowl represents the sin that entangles and hinders your ability to be who God made you to be. And most of us will listen to what Jesus is saying and will think about Joseph and go, yeah, it wouldn't be smart for us to put this bowl under it because then people wouldn't be able to see God. If we put this bowl over the top, well, then no one sees the light. And that's true. We are called to shine with good deeds so that people will understand how good God is. We are called to be people that reveal that he's there, that reveal that he's present, that show people he's sovereign. Because remember, we're not projectors, we're lighters. We reveal that. But what's in Jesus' analogy that I only thought about recently was the effect that this has on you and why Hebrews says you need to shed it. Because an interesting thing happens if you put a bowl over a lamp. Over enough time, the oxygen that feeds that flame will be burnt up. And the flame itself will go out. So what I'm fascinated by is there's not just an effect on those that don't get the light because you're not shining. There's an effect on you. That your shining has a direct correlation to your sense of being on fire for God. I lived in a world where every other weekend seemed like every other weekend, we're taking teenagers off to camp. And we'd come back, and I remember teenagers saying all the time, I feel so on fire for God. And you might walk out of here half the Sundays of the year going, I feel so on fire for God. But then in a day or two, you are just like that candle, and it seems like the flame got put out. And Hebrews and Jesus say, you need to remove whatever is hindering your ability to shine. And what that tells you is that faith must be lived out loud, not conceptually assented to. Some people think that faith is this thing we just get up in our heads. It's this thing that we think about. It's this thing that we kind of mentally agree with. But because of this correlation, it's more than that. There's something about the way you live out your life, the way that you interact with people, the way that you spend your money, the way that you prioritize your time, the way that you think, and all of that is related to your sense of being close to God. What other people see in you because of the way you live says something. It's not about show. It's not about projection. It's about revealing. You see, faith isn't rose-colored glasses. It's seeing reality. Before I let you go, I got to let you know something that's going to be hard for you to hear. Nobody puts this bowl on you. You do. You put your own bowl on you. So, real quick, what's yours? Now, I could spend the rest of the morning going through a list of possibilities of what that could be, but chances are, for the last 5 minutes, you've had a thing going through your head, or you've had a someone going through your head. And you've come to realize they're not just hindering your ability to shine for others, they're hindering your ability to feel close to God and get that sense of that He is present and that He is infusing the gray with the color. But we can live our whole life thinking, well, God, I would live closer to you and I would do more for you and I would be more for you if you just quit surrounding me with people that are going to put my flame out all the time. Right? I mean, come on. God, if you would just fix all of my circumstances, if you would just make life easier, then I'd burn bright, but you keep throwing a bowl over it. And God goes, no, 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 no. You keep throwing a bowl over it. Because remember what I said in Hebrews, throw off. What throw off means is that you have to throw it off. This bowl staying over the top of you, preventing you from living a Technicolor life, you have the ability to throw that off. It's why Jesus said, let your light shine. You have the ability to let your light shine. It doesn't say, ask someone else to let your light shine. No, you let your light shine. You have a choice. What that means is that God has empowered you through the power of the Holy Spirit. As you stand on the truth of the gospel, He has empowered you to throw off or shed whatever hinders or entangles you from living a Joseph Technicolor kind of life. You've been empowered. But we're so content so often with saying it's somebody else's fault. It's the world's fault. The world's got me down. But Technicolor is removing the distortion and providing light. Removing the noise. Faith isn't rose-colored glasses, it's seeing reality. The only thing that gets projected in this scenario is the sin. That's the only thing that gets put on something else. Hard, but true. And so we're called to live this life, like Jesus said, that provides light to others and helps us burn bright. If you've ever read the Message paraphrase of this, it says that we're called to bring out the God colors in the world. We are called to shine light into the shadows to show people that there is hope in those shadows. That God is present there. That in the grayest and drabbest of circumstances, God has promised there's more to it. And that is the hope we have confidence in. And Him being the author and the worker of the story, that's what we have assurance in, is that there's more than what we see. So as a people, can you imagine what it would look like for a group of our size to be less concerned about how loud we can get and more concerned with how bright we shine? Let me say that again. Can you imagine a community of people who are more concerned with how bright we shine than how loud we get? A group of people that say, whatever it takes to get the hindrance away, whatever it takes to remove the selfishness and the pridefulness and the sinfulness from my life so that I can be on fire for God and show other people that he's not this removed God that wound up his little toy and let it go and now doesn't care what's happening, but that he is intimately involved in the story that he is writing from page 1 to the last. That community, friends, will literally change the world because Jesus said it would. When the light shines so bright that the shadows run, God wins. That's life in Technicolor. That's the life of Joseph. Therefore, we go do the same. Will you pray with me? Father, help us to have the courage and the discipline and the selflessness to live this kind of life. Because some of the things that you will call us to shed in the next couple days are things that we love, if we're being honest. Things that comfort us. Things that excite us. But they might be holding us back from you. Lord, some of those things might be things like bitterness. I can only imagine if Joseph had held on to his, how different the story would have been. Some of it might be anger or past pain. And we are grateful this morning that you are a God of hope. That you are a God that even though we can't see you, we see you. We see you working. We see you delivering your promise. Forgive us for the days we ignore that truth. Forgive us for the days that we believe the projection instead of chasing the light. Lord, we want Emmanuel Church, this group of people, to be the kind of people who you said or say they shine bright.